Good evening. Before you settle in for the night, I want you to stay with me for a few minutes, because what I'm about to share may change how you think about leg weakness, balance, and aging. A lot of older adults are told the same thing when their legs start feeling unreliable. They're told it's just age, just wear and tear, just part of getting older. And while aging absolutely changes the body, that explanation is often incomplete. Because in many people, weaker legs are not only about age, they're also about what the body is missing. Sometimes the muscles are not getting enough of the nutrients they need to repair. Sometimes the nerves that tell the legs how to move are not being supported properly. Sometimes sleep is poor, recovery is poor, circulation is sluggish, and the body is quietly losing strength month by month without anyone naming the real contributors. That is why tonight's topic matters. We are going to talk about 3 vitamins that are especially important to review after 60 if your legs feel weak, tired, crampy, numb, shaky, or less dependable than they used to feel. And I want to be careful with my wording here. This is not about randomly swallowing more supplements. It is not about promising miracles. And it is not about saying every older adult needs the exact same pill routine. It is about understanding that deficiencies and low levels become more common with age. And when they happen, they can show up in the legs first. They can show up as slower walking, as poor balance, as trouble climbing stairs, as difficulty getting up from a chair, as nighttime leg cramps, as tingling in the feet, as a feeling that the legs just don't listen the way they once did. And here is what makes nighttime such an important part of this conversation. Your body does a great deal of its repair work while you sleep. Overnight is when tissues recover. It's when the nervous system resets. It's when the body shifts into maintenance mode. So if your routine is missing something essential, that gap can keep showing up in the way your legs feel the next day. Tonight, I'm going to walk you through 3 vitamins worth discussing with your clinician and reviewing in your routine if leg weakness has become a real concern. We'll go from number 3 to number 1. And stay with me until the end, because the final one is the nutrient many older adults overlook even when they are already taking supplements. But before we start, I want you to think about something personal. What do your legs still allow you to do that you never want to lose? Is it walking through the grocery store without fear? Going up your own stairs? Standing in the kitchen long enough to cook? Playing with grandchildren? Gardening? Taking yourself to the bathroom in the middle of the night without holding onto the wall? Hold that image in your mind as we go through this, because this conversation is not really about vitamins. It is about independence. Let's start with number 3. Hashtag number 3. Vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 does not get enough attention when people talk about leg strength, but it should. Because your legs do not run on muscle alone. They also run on nerve function. And B12 plays a major role in helping the nervous system do its job. When B12 is too low, communication between the brain and the body can become less efficient. That can show up in ways older adults notice very clearly. Tingling in the feet, numbness, a burning feeling, poor coordination, slower reaction time, a heavy or disconnected feeling in the legs. Sometimes people describe it as if their feet don't quite know where the floor is. That matters enormously for walking and balance. And here is the problem. B12 issues become more common as people get older. Not always because they eat badly, but because absorption can become less reliable with age. Some older adults make less stomach acid. Some take acid-reducing medications. Some have digestive issues that interfere with absorption. So even if the diet looks decent on paper, B12 levels may still not be where they need to be. This is one reason B12 deficiency can hide in plain sight. People may blame age, arthritis, or just being tired, when part of the issue is that the nerves are undersupported. Now, to be clear, B12 is not a magic fix for every case of weak legs. But if B12 is low, correcting that deficiency can make a very meaningful difference. Sometimes in energy, sometimes in sensation, sometimes in steadiness. sometimes in confidence. And I want to emphasize something important. If you have persistent numbness, tingling, burning feet, balance problems, or trouble with foot placement while walking, that is not something to brush off casually. It is something worth bringing up directly, because nerve-related problems are one of the major ways leg weakness becomes dangerous. So why are we talking about B12 in the context of bedtime? Not because bedtime is some miracle hour, but because older adults often do best when supplements are attached to a routine they actually remember. And for many people, the evening routine is more consistent than the morning. The house gets quieter, distractions are fewer. The habit is easier to keep. Some people also prefer sublingual B12, the kind that dissolves under the tongue, especially if they have absorption concerns. Others use standard tablets, and some need injections depending on the cause and severity of deficiency. That is why testing and personalization matter. One of the biggest mistakes older adults make is guessing. They feel weak or unsteady, assume they need more vitamins, and start piling supplements on top of each other without understanding what they're treating. A better approach is to ask, could B12 be part of this picture? If so, what form makes sense? What dose makes sense? And do I actually know my level? Because if the nerves are part of the problem, B12 deserves real attention. And when nerve function is better supported, the legs often feel more responsive. Not perfect overnight, but more awake, more reliable, more connected. So if you've noticed numbness in the feet, tingling at night, loss of confidence on uneven ground, or a feeling that your feet are not giving your brain clear information anymore, B12 is one of the first vitamins worth reviewing. Now let's move to number 2. And this one is much more widely known, but still surprisingly misunderstood. Hashtag number 2. Vitamin D3. Most people hear vitamin D and think about bones. And yes, vitamin D matters for bones. But after 60, it also matters for muscle function, balance, and physical performance much more than many people realize. In fact, one of the clearest associations researchers have seen in older adults is the link between low vitamin D levels and poorer lower body function. That means weaker legs, slower walking, more trouble standing up, less stability, a higher risk of falls. Why does that happen? Because vitamin D is involved in far more than bone density. Muscle tissue has vitamin D receptors. In other words, muscles are designed to respond to it. When vitamin D is too low, the muscles do not function as well as they should. Recovery can be worse, strength can be lower, balance can suffer. This is especially important in the legs, because the legs carry the body through every ordinary task of life. When they weaken, the whole day changes. An older adult with low vitamin D may not say, "I think my vitamin D is low." They'll say, "My legs feel tired all the time." Or, "I can't seem to get stronger no matter what I do." Or, "I feel slower than I used to." Or, "I don't trust my balance anymore." And because these changes happen gradually, they are often written off as normal aging instead of being investigated. Now, vitamin D deficiency is common for several reasons. People spend more time indoors, skin becomes less efficient at producing vitamin D from sunlight, diet may not provide enough. Some medical conditions and medications interfere. So again, this is not about blame. It is about recognizing a common, fixable problem. And just like with B12, I want to be careful and honest here. Taking vitamin D when your level is already adequate is not the same as correcting a real deficiency. The big benefits tend to show up when low levels are identified and addressed appropriately. That is why testing can be so helpful. Now let's talk about timing, because your original topic focuses on before bed. Here is the honest version. The most important thing with vitamin D is not the exact hour on the clock. It is regular intake and the right dose for your situation. Some people take it in the morning, some at lunch, some in the evening. For many, the best time is simply the time they will remember consistently. That said, if taking it at night is what makes it part of a steady routine, that can work well for many people. Vitamin D is fat-soluble, so it is often better absorbed when taken with food or a small amount of fat. That could be a few nuts, yogurt, or part of dinner, depending on what your clinician recommends. What I do not want people to hear is take random large doses at bedtime and your legs will be fixed. That is not responsible. But what I do want people to hear is this. If your vitamin D is low, your muscles may be trying to function without one of the basic tools they need, and that can absolutely affect the legs. Some older adults notice that once vitamin D deficiency is corrected, they feel steadier, less achy, better able to recover from ordinary activity, more willing to move. That matters because better movement leads to more movement, and more movement gives the legs a chance to hold on to their strength. That is one of the most important points in this entire video. Nutrients do not replace activity. They support it, and when the support improves, people often re-enter movement with more success. So if your legs feel chronically weak, if your walking speed has dropped, if you're having more trouble with stairs, or if you've had falls or near falls, vitamin D3 is not something to ignore. Now we come to number 1, and this is the one that many people miss, especially if they're already taking vitamin D and calcium but still wondering why their body feels stiff, fragile, or less reliable than it should. Hashtag number 1. Vitamin K2. Vitamin K2 is not nearly as famous as B12 or vitamin D, but it plays a very important supporting role, especially in older adults who are already thinking about bones, calcium, and mobility. To understand why K2 matters, think of it this way. It helps guide calcium toward the places where calcium is useful, especially bones, rather than allowing it to be poorly managed in the body. That's why K2 often enters the conversation when people are thinking seriously about long-term bone and vascular health. Now, I want to be precise here. K2 is not a direct leg strength vitamin in the same way protein fuels muscle or B12 supports nerves. But it matters because the body does not move well when the skeletal system, muscle system, and circulation system are all pulling in different directions. Older adults often focus on one part of the problem and miss the bigger picture. They say, "My knees feel weak," or "My calves feel tight," or "My legs ache." But sometimes what they're really feeling is a combination of muscle weakness, joint stiffness, poor recovery, and a body that is not managing calcium and tissue support as effectively as it should. This is where K2 becomes worth understanding. K2 works especially closely with vitamin D. Many people know about vitamin D and calcium, but fewer know that K2 helps complete the picture. If someone is taking vitamin D already, especially long-term, K2 is often the nutrient they have never even asked about. And yes, some older adults do feel better overall when this piece is corrected. But here is the part that must be said clearly. K2 is not for everybody to start blindly, and it is especially important to be cautious if you take blood thinners such as warfarin. That interaction is not a minor detail. It matters. So why include K2 as number 1 in this script? Because it is so often the forgotten conversation. B12 gets discussed sometimes. Vitamin D gets discussed more often. But K2 often never comes up, even in people who are highly focused on bones, mobility, and aging. And that means some older adults build a supplement routine with missing logic. They take calcium because they heard bones need it. They take vitamin D because they heard bones and muscles need it. But they never ask whether the overall system is being supported properly. The result is that they may still feel stiff, still feel fragile, still feel like recovery is incomplete. K2 is not a miracle answer. But it is an important missing piece in many older adult conversations about long-term mobility. And again, timing matters less than consistency and safety. If bedtime is the routine that makes it easy to remember, that can be practical. Many people choose to take K2 with vitamin D in the evening because they already pair those habits together. The exact schedule matters less than whether it fits their medications, their clinician's advice, and their actual needs. So, if you are already thinking about bone health, balance, long-term joint support, or if you're taking vitamin D and wondering whether you've overlooked part of the puzzle, K2 is worth asking about. And that brings us to a very important point, because even though tonight's video is about 3 vitamins, vitamins do not work in a vacuum. If you want stronger legs, better recovery, and more reliable balance, you need to create an environment where those nutrients can actually help. So, before we close, I want to give you 3 simple nighttime habits that make any nutrition plan more effective. Hashtag Habit 1. Stop going into the night dehydrated. A lot of older adults do not realize how much mild dehydration can affect their legs. When the body is underhydrated, muscles are more irritable, circulation can feel worse, and cramping becomes more likely. Some people wake up at night with tight calves or sore feet and assume it is just age. Sometimes it is, but sometimes the body has simply gone too long without enough fluid. Now, I'm not suggesting you drink large amounts of water right before bed and ruin your sleep with repeated bathroom trips. That's not helpful either. What helps more is steady hydration during the day, so your body does not enter the evening already depleted. Then, if you want, a modest amount of fluid earlier in the evening rather than a large amount at the last minute. If your legs often feel heavy, cramped, or tight at night, hydration deserves more respect than it usually gets. Hashtag Habit 2. Don't make your last meal of the day a sugar-heavy one. Your body does repair work at night. But if your evening routine is built around desserts, large portions of refined starch, or constant snacking, recovery may not go as smoothly as it could. That doesn't mean you need a perfect diet. It means it helps to give the body a calmer nutritional environment before sleep. A lighter, more balanced dinner with protein and vegetables often works better than a late-night pattern of bread, sweets, chips, or heavy processed food. When blood sugar is swinging and digestion is overloaded, the body is not set up as well for overnight repair. And if you are trying to support legs that already feel weak, the evening meal is part of that equation. Hashtag Habit 3. Wake up the legs gently before bed, not strenuous exercise. Not a workout, just a few gentle minutes of movement. Ankle pumps, seated leg extensions. A few sit-to-stands if safe. Light marching in place while holding onto a counter. Simple calf raises. Gentle stretching. Why does this matter? Because muscles and circulation respond to movement. A little evening movement can help the legs feel less stagnant. It can support blood flow. It can reduce the feeling of stiffness settling in before sleep. And for some people, it makes the whole nighttime routine feel more intentional. The body responds well when recovery is paired with use. Gentle movement plus good sleep plus the right nutrient support is a much stronger strategy than supplements alone. Hashtag How to build a practical bedtime routine. So, let's make this simple. If you want a realistic nighttime routine to discuss with your clinician and personalize for yourself, think in this order. First, review whether B12 could be part of your weakness, numbness, or balance problem. Second, make sure vitamin D3 has actually been checked and corrected if low instead of guessed. Third, if you are already focused on bone health or taking vitamin D and calcium, ask whether K2 belongs in the conversation, especially if you are not on medications that conflict with it. Then support all of that with steady hydration through the day, a calmer evening meal, and a few minutes of gentle leg movement. That is a real plan. Not hype, not fear, not false promises, a real plan. And that matters because older adults deserve better than vague advice and wishful thinking. They deserve clear explanations, safe routines, and strategies that actually make sense. Hashtag closing so, let's bring everything together. Leg weakness after 60 is not always just aging. Sometimes it is a warning sign. Sometimes it is the body asking for support. Sometimes it is the nervous system underperforming. Sometimes it is low vitamin D. Sometimes it is poor B12 status. Sometimes it is a missing conversation about K2 and long-term structural support. And very often it is several small things working together. That is why this matters. Vitamin B12 supports the nerves that help your legs respond. Vitamin D3 supports muscle function, balance, and recovery. Vitamin K2 supports the broader system, especially when bone health and calcium balance are part of the picture. None of these nutrients is a miracle by itself, but ignored deficiencies can quietly change how you walk, how you balance, how you recover, and how safe you feel in your own body. So the real question tonight is not, what's the most exciting supplement? The real question is, what might my body be missing? What have I never actually checked? And what would change if I stopped blaming age for everything? Because your legs are not asking for hype. They are asking for support. And if your goal is to stay mobile, steady, and independent for as long as possible, then the quiet routines you build before bed may matter more than you think. Start with awareness. Move to testing. Choose consistency over panic. And let your routine become part of how you protect your strength.